Welcome to our channel English Improvement. Today I talk to story. Once upon a time, there was a young boy named Arham who had a terrible temper. Whenever something upset him, he would yell, slam doors, and say hurtful words. His family and friends started avoiding him because they didn't want to deal with his anger. One day, Arham's father gave him a bag of nails and a hammer. He said, "Every time you lose your temper, go outside and hammer a nail into the wooden fence." On the first day, Arham hammered 37 nails into the fence. He was shocked by how much effort it took. Over the next few weeks, he learned to control his anger. Each time he felt angry, he took a deep breath instead of hammering a nail. Slowly, the number of nails he hammered decreased. Finally, one day Arham didn't hammer a single nail. Proud, he ran to tell his father. His father smiled and said, "Good. Now, each day you control your temper, go and pull one nail out of the fence." Days passed, and soon the nails were gone. His father then took him to the fence and said, "Look closely. The nails are gone, but the holes remain. Anger is like that, son. Even if you apologize, the damage caused by angry words can leave scars." Arham realized how important it was to stay calm and think before reacting. From that day on, he made a promise to control his anger through deep breathing, walking away from arguments, and speaking calmly. Arham was an ordinary boy, full of life and energy, but his temper was like a storm that could strike without warning. His anger was quick, sharp, and often louder than the situation required. If a friend made a small mistake, Arham would shout. If someone teased him, he would slam doors or throw things around. At first, it seemed small and harmless, but over time, his friends stopped inviting him to play, and his teachers started warning him that his temper would only bring trouble. One afternoon, after a particularly bad argument with his best friend over a simple game, Arham's father sat him down in the garden. He handed him a small wooden box. Inside was a hammer and a bag of shiny nails. Arham looked puzzled. His father said gently, "Every time you get angry and lose control, go outside and hammer one nail into the fence." Arham was curious but agreed. The very next day, when his sister accidentally spilled juice on his notebook, his anger flared up. Instead of yelling, he grabbed the hammer and went to the fence. He hammered one nail into the wood as hard as he could. The sound of the hammer hitting the wood echoed in his ears, and he realized how much strength it took. By the end of the day, he had hammered 12 nails into the fence. The following days were no better. Every time he felt annoyed or frustrated, the nails went in one after another. His hands started aching. The fence was slowly filling up with metal. Arham began to wonder if he was really this angry all the time. The act of hammering made him think about each situation carefully. Soon, he began to notice that many of the things he got angry about were small, silly things: someone borrowing his pencil, his brother accidentally stepping on his toy, a friend arriving a few minutes late. Little by little, Arham began to pause before reacting. The next time he felt anger rising, he stopped and asked himself, "Is this really worth a nail?" Sometimes he still got angry, but more often, he chose to walk away or take a deep breath. The number of nails hammered each day began to drop. At first, it was 10 nails a day, then 5, then 2, until one day Arham did not hammer a single nail. He ran to his father, excited, and said, "Father, I didn't hammer any nails today. I didn't lose my temper even once." His father smiled warmly. "Good job, my son. Now, every day that you keep your temper under control, pull one nail out of the fence." Arham liked this idea. Day after day, he worked to stay calm, and with each day, a nail came out. Some days were hard, he still felt the anger rise inside him, but he reminded himself of the effort it had taken to hammer those nails. Thinking before reacting became easier. Soon, the fence was free of nails, but it was covered with tiny holes. One evening, when the last nail was gone, Arham's father took him outside and made him look at the fence closely. "Do you see these holes?" he asked. "They will always remain. When you lose your temper, you say things that hurt others. Even if you apologize later, the words leave scars just like these holes in the wood. That is why you must think before you react. If you speak with anger, you cannot take those words back." Arham felt a heavy realization wash over him. He remembered all the times he had shouted at his friends and family, and how sad they had looked. He felt sorry for leaving those invisible holes in their hearts. From that day forward, he promised himself that whenever anger tried to control him, he would stop, breathe deeply, and think about what he was about to say. Weeks turned into months, and Arham's friends began noticing the change. He was calmer, kinder, and more thoughtful. When someone made a mistake, instead of yelling, he would talk calmly and find a solution. When his brother accidentally broke one of his toys, Arham wanted to shout, but he stopped, took a deep breath, and said, "It's okay, it was an accident." His brother hugged him tightly, grateful that Arham was no longer scary when he was angry. One day at school, a classmate made fun of Arham during a game. The old Arham would have shouted back or even started a fight, but this time he simply smiled and walked away. Later, his teacher told him, "Arham, you have grown into a wise young man. It takes courage to stay calm when someone tries to upset you." Arham realized that controlling anger was not just about keeping quiet, it was about thinking clearly, choosing words carefully, and not allowing small problems to take away his peace. He began to enjoy life more. He could laugh at small mistakes, forgive others easily, and focus on what truly mattered. Years later, when Arham became an adult, he still remembered the lesson of the nails and the fence. Whenever anger threatened to rise, he would close his eyes for a moment, breathe deeply, and ask himself if reacting angrily would solve anything. Most of the time, it wouldn't. Thinking before reacting became his greatest strength. Arham learned that anger is natural, but uncontrolled anger can break relationships, hurt feelings, and leave scars that never truly heal. The best way to control anger is to give yourself a pause, to think before speaking, to breathe before reacting, and to let your heart be wiser than your temper. This simple habit turned Arham into a person everyone respected and loved. When Arham was young, he never thought much about the power of words. To him, shouting when he was upset was normal, slamming doors was just his way of expressing frustration, and saying mean things when angry was something everyone did. But as time passed, he began to notice something strange. People around him became quiet whenever he entered the room. His little sister avoided playing with him. His friends at school stopped sharing jokes with him. Even his mother looked tired every time he got angry. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with his best friend, Arham felt a hollow emptiness inside. His friend had left in tears after Arham called him names over a small misunderstanding. That night, Arham's father found him sitting quietly, staring at the floor. He sat down beside him and said softly, "Arham, anger is like fire. If you don't control it, it burns everything, your friendships, your happiness, even your own heart." The next morning, his father gave him a bag of nails and a hammer and took him to the old wooden fence in their backyard. "Every time you lose your temper," he instructed, "hammer a nail into this fence." At first, Arham thought it was a silly idea, but he did as he was told. By evening, there were 20 nails hammered into the wood. Each time he got angry, he hammered hard, imagining his frustration going into the wood. After a few days, the fence was filled with nails. His father then told him, "Now, every time you manage to control your anger, pull out one nail." This new task was harder than he expected. Controlling his anger required effort, patience, and courage. Slowly, one by one, the nails started coming out. It took weeks, but finally, Arham managed to remove every nail. He was proud of himself and called his father to see the fence. His father stood silently for a moment, then walked closer and touched the fence. "You have done well, Arham," he said, "but look at the fence. What do you see?" Arham looked carefully. The fence was full of tiny holes where the nails had once been. "The nails are gone, but the holes are still here," Arham replied. His father nodded. "That is exactly what happens when you hurt others in anger. You can say sorry, and they may forgive you, but the pain you caused, like these holes, never completely disappears. Anger leaves scars." The words sank deep into Arham's heart. He thought of his friend who had cried because of him, his sister who stayed away when he shouted, and his mother who had gone to bed with tears in her eyes after one of his angry outbursts. He realized he had left many invisible holes in the hearts of the people he loved. From that day, Arham became more careful with his words. When anger rose inside him, he reminded himself of the fence. He asked himself, "Do I really want to leave another hole in someone's heart?" Sometimes he still felt like shouting, but he would stop, take a deep breath, and choose silence or calm words instead. Slowly, the change became visible to everyone. His sister began playing with him again. His mother's face looked more relaxed, and his friends started trusting him with their secrets and jokes. They could see that Arham was not just avoiding anger, he was learning to heal the holes he had once made. One day, his best friend, the one who had left in tears weeks ago, came to him. Arham apologized sincerely, and this time his friend smiled and said, "I forgive you, Arham. You've changed." That smile felt like a patch over one of the holes in the fence. Arham knew that while scars remain, kindness and patience can make them less painful. Years later, when Arham grew into a young man, he carried this lesson with him everywhere. Whenever he faced conflict at school or at work, he remembered the fence full of holes. He learned to speak carefully even in difficult moments. He would pause before replying to an insult, take a walk when he was angry, and return only when he was calm. People began to admire him for his patience and wisdom. Arham realized that controlling anger was not about burying feelings or pretending to be calm. It was about respecting others enough not to wound them with words, and respecting himself enough to not live with regret later. He became known as someone who could settle arguments peacefully, someone people turned to when they needed advice, but the memory of the holes in the fence never left him. Whenever he saw someone shouting at another person, he felt a pang in his heart, because he knew how easily those moments of anger could leave permanent marks. He would step in gently and remind them, "Think before you speak, words can hurt more than a wound." Arham's life became an example of how anger, if left uncontrolled, can damage relationships, but when controlled, can become a teacher. He understood that once harsh words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. The apology may close the wound, but the scar will always remind the other person of the pain. He grew up believing that the real strength of a person lies in choosing kindness over anger, even when provoked. And every time he was tempted to lose his temper, he would smile and imagine himself standing by that old fence with holes, a fence that had taught him one of the most valuable lessons of his life: anger may come and go, but its scars remain.